I have friends that say, oh, I cooked the perfect steak and it was great. But in my experience, you cannot nail it perfectly every time on a grill or in the oven or even with thermometers or whatnot. But there is one way to know that you're going to get absolute perfection on a steak every single time. And that is with using a precision cooking device like a Sous Vide. And so like, well, what's a Sous Vide? So here you go. I'm going to do a quick video on it. You know, it's pretty simple. It's down and dirty. It ain't too complicated. You get a, you know, like $5 bucket. It could be any kind of bucket. It really doesn't matter. I mean, the liquid and fluid in it really doesn't matter either because you're not really cooking in the fluid. The food is protected from the fluid. As you can see here, the food is inside a bag. So the food never even touches the fluid. You could be cooking it in, you know, motor oil for all it really matters. I mean, this motor over here, it probably would matter to it what fluid it's generating and moving around to keep it a heat. But the premise of a Sous Vide is it's an immersion cooker. This is basically a heating element. It sits inside of a fluid that it just heats to a perfect temperature, and then it keeps it at that perfect temperature. Now everybody's like, oh, well, you got to worry about germs and bacteria. Okay, well, germs and bacteria only resides on the surface of the product that you're cooking. It doesn't actually reside inside the meat. So when we're done actually cooking the meat to the proper temperature, we're going to sear it inside of this guy. And that's going to kill off any of the remaining germs. And you know, if I'm incorrect on this, post me some links on some of this and maybe I'll have to correct myself. I'm not necessarily, you know, perfectionist on the science part of it, but that's my understanding of it, and I haven't got sick and I don't got 2-foot tapeworms coming out my butthole. So I think I'm pretty accurate on it. But point being is, I mean, you don't want to overcook your meat and then it's going to get tough in my opinion. And so how does it function? You've got your element. You're going to set your temperature here. You can do that with this dial right here. I mean, I will link in the video, you know, what ones you want to buy. I mean, when I bought mine, it was 200 bucks. I'm sure the prices have come down greatly. I think I've seen them on sale for like 80 to 100 bucks now. But I bought mine a couple of years ago. So you can see I'm adjusting mine for steak. I like to do 130. So I'm getting it back to 130. And there's the thing is, it is exactly 130. The water will be perfectly 130 degrees. Right now it's 123.7 and it feels like a sauna. And it's 124. It'll beep when it gets there. I mean, it's got Wi-Fi built in. You can connect it up to your router. It's like a pot. Oh, come on. My brain is failing me. It's like one of them pot roast machines. You could set this up from working at home or at work, hit it at home and tell it to start cooking it. And here's the other thing too. This thing only needs to bring the meat up to temperature. So it could take, it roughly for steak, about an hour and a half, the steak is ready. Now, it could sit in it for 24 hours and not do any harm to the meat. The meat is still perfectly tender and ready to go. However, the longer it sits past, say, 2.5 hours, the more fluid is going to come out of that meat and it'll be less juicy. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you can let it sit 3-4 hours. You're not going to see a huge, terrible difference. You can let it sit for 8. You can start it when you go to work, come home at the end of the day, quickly sear it, and you're done. And you're going to be like, oh, that's an amazing steak. And it's going to be an amazing steak every single time. I mean, it's easy to clean. There's no mess, no fuss. Again, you get a bucket, you put some water in it, you attach your Sous Vide to the side of it with just a quick little clamp right here. You set the temperature, you walk away. If you want to do the wireless Bluetooth setup so you can set timers on it from your phone and say, oh, turn on now, I'll be home in 3 hours. That's up to you. You can do all sorts of dishes, special dishes with this, but in my opinion, really what it's best at is 100% meat. Meat and more meat. Vegetables, you know, meat. This thing's all about cooking meat to perfect temperatures. Chicken, beef. Fish is okay, but I'd rather smoke it. I mean, really, you know, duck is great. I mean, anything you're gonna sear afterwards is great. Now, the other kicker is to get your meat to sit properly, I usually use a clip, but any bag of work. Now, if you got a vacuum sealer, sorry, here, let's rearrange this. If you have a vacuum sealer, you can use vacuum seals. I mean, you can suck out all the air and then it'll really submerge into the water, but all that matters is that the meat's not floating and that it'll stay submerged. And if you leave a little, sorry, my filming's horrible. As long as you crack a little side of this as you put it into the water, the air pockets will get kicked out, and then you can seal it up as all the air was pushed out slowly. And seasoning and or fat. Even though the meat comes out super tender like this, the fat's not getting rendered when you're cooking it at such lower temperatures like this. So gristle and fat is something you typically cut around. It's not like on a steak that you're going to cook, well, even when you cook it sometimes on a grill or slow roast it, you know, that fat renders down, becomes nice and juicy, and then you're going to want to, like, you know, have a piece of that with your meat. And a lot of the time when you sous vide it, you want to cut the fat out. And there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, I mean, it's healthier eating, right? A lot of the time. But fats are important in your diet. I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying that when you cook it this way, the fat doesn't get fully, really broken down. So it's not necessarily as a tasty component. Especially when you're doing thicker steaks like this. Unless you let it cook for longer hours, then maybe you sear it, then the fat's a little bit better. But again, it's, you know, when you're doing it like this, you're cooking it for the most tender steak possible. So choosing the right cuts. Now, if you're getting like a piece of like chicken breast or something, or duck or anything like that, then the fat doesn't matter. I'm just talking like goat or steak or something like that. Then the fat could potentially be something you want to work around. Seasoning. And I'm going to just pull this out with 45 minutes left just to show it real quick. And of course, let's try and film it as I'm doing it. So this is what it looks like with still like an hour left. I know it doesn't look that impressive, and it won't. And you can see the juices that have rendered off so far. That's just blood that's come out, and that's exactly what I would expect. And you'll notice that there's nothing in the bag. I didn't add any pre-marinade. I didn't add any seasoning. I didn't add anything. It's not really needed. Let me see if I can't clip this back to it while I, look at that, I got skills. This time I did that a lot faster. So here's the deal with that. Now, if you wanted to add just a little touch of marinade to it, you know, some soy sauce or some lemon juice or Coca-Cola or barbecue sauce or whatever you want to it, and do that like 2 days prior and let it sit in that bag, vacuum sealed, you know, a couple days before, and then do this process, sure, it'll embark a little bit of flavor to the meat, but it's not gonna do like a massive change to the meat. If you let it sit for like a week, it'll totally, or at least 3-4 days, it'll make a different flavor. I don't find that it's really necessary. If you want to put a sprig of like rosemary in there, sure you can, but it's really only gonna really flavor that meat next to where that sprig is when you vacuum seal that meat. Really, I don't even season it before I put it on the pan. You pretty much cook it plain right here without any seasoning on it whatsoever, no ingredients. You sear it without any ingredients, and then when you take it off and you plate it, that's when I salt, pepper, have like a little side tub of whatever sauce I want, whether it's horseradish or whether it's au jus or whether it's barbecue or, you know, whatever kind of special sauce you want, a hollandaise, whatever sauce you want to put on your meat. That's fine, whether it's, you know, winger sauce and some barbecue sauce and some Worcestershire, whatever you want to do, that's great. That's when you season it. Or if you want to put some like mango paprika on the steak after it comes off, then do it after it comes off, and that steak's going to taste great. Once I let it sit for an hour and a half, I'm probably going to get this guy up to about 375. I'm going to stick it over on my oven, which, you know, I'll be moving soon, but get this nice and hot, and then I'm going to throw it on each side for about 1 minute and 45 seconds and just sear it, because otherwise, I'm gonna be honest, if you do not sear the meat, it tastes funny. It doesn't give it a texture that you really want. It just seems really, really wonky. When you sear it, it firms it up just a touch on the outside, and it'll also, like I said, if you're worried about bacteria, you'll give it that final kill on any other bacteria on it. And so here in 2 hours, I'll come back. I'll sear it up, I'll cut it open, you can see what, and this is, oh, here's the other real big kicker. The thicker the meat, the better. Now, if you're gonna go thicker, you're gonna wanna let it cook just a little longer so it just brings the temperature of the steak up. I mean, that's all it's doing, is it's bringing the temperature of the steak up to the temperature you set it at on the device. You just gotta let it do that. Once it reaches that temperature, it's perfect. Sear it, serve it. That's all it is. But the thicker the steak, the better for sous vide, because you do want to sear it no matter what. And that searing is going to still cook it just a touch. So again, you know, it's really, and then I've got a list of all my temperatures I do everything to. I'll put that in the video. I'll also provide some links to some sous vides. Okay, steak's been in there for a good 2 hours now. I'm about to pull that out here in just a minute and let it rest, probably for a minute before I put it in here. I got the cast iron skillet preheating, and let's just see, what does my thermometer say we're at? We're at 225 there, and 150. I bet we're a little bit more there. You're not going to be able to see this when I do it, but I bet when I pull that skillet and look at the middle, it's more like 300 something. But I'm about to pull it and let it rest here in just a second. In fact, here, let's grab a paper plate. Technically speaking, it is already cooked. In fact, I just pulled the plug on the sous vide. Move the clip over, and you can do as much, you know, as you can fit in there. And now you can see, here, let's center that. You can see what it looks like when it's finished. And it is recommended, here we go, that you let it rest for a minute to let some of those juices maybe reabsorb into the meat. And here, let's bring it back over into maybe a proper counter area. If you look at that, kind of looks almost like a prime rib the way it's been cooked. I'm gonna let it sit for a few minutes and let it maybe reabsorb some of those juices. I mean, again, if you hold it straight up and down or something like that, you can see that's how much juice has come off that meat while it's cooked. That's what you lose when it's on the grill or anything. But we're gonna, you know, not reuse it, but hopefully let that sit in there for a minute. And here you go. Let's see. You can see the juices maybe changed a little bit of color, and they've started to somewhat, a little bit reabsorb into the meat. And that meat's really tender. I can tell you. I mean, I'm just squeezing it, and that's medium rare, which is where you want it when you're eating steak, if you're a steak lover, in my opinion. And I'm gonna let that sit in there the whole time, right up until the point where I slap it down on the grill here. And I'm probably gonna maybe sear that for 1:30 and then flip it, and then 1:30 tops. So let's see, what's our temperature at now? Oh yeah, 395. We're gonna call that good. We're gonna say it's been resting. Time for some tummy tong. And again, this meat, it's already done. And if you look at it, it just doesn't look tasty. I mean, you don't really want to eat it. It'd feel all weird in your mouth. The texture, the mouthfeel is just really weird. But perfect, just like that, done. Put this on the heat. All right, and this is what a perfectly perfectly cooked steak looks like. And it takes no time at all of actual work. I mean, I'm having to stop to do the video and everything, but literally, I mean, there's the empty bucket. I don't got to do anything. I don't got to clean it. I just got to empty the water and put it all away, let it dry, you know, put it away. I let it sit there till tomorrow, and I can throw some chicken breasts in there and some fish, and boom, I go right at it again, and all I got to do is just spend 5 minutes to let that preheat up and 2 minutes to sear it. 1 minute on each side, pull it out, boom. Perfectly cooked steak. Now I'm going to let this sit for just a second. While I'm letting it sit, I'm going to put some seasoning on it. And I'm just going with some simple salt and pepper, and I got some mango habanero seasoning. Boom. Perfectly cooked, medium rare. You'll never overcook it. You can look at it, you can see that there's a rim around it that's cooked, that it's seared. And I tell you what, it is the most tender, juiciest, and this fat right here, since it's thin, won't be bad. But real big, thick, hunky meats of fat, again, will not do well. I pretty much just ate it with just the seasoning I put on it, salt, pepper, and the habanero mango seasoning I put on it. It was spectacular. I ate all the fat that came with it. It was perfectly cooked like that. And I've been to steakhouses just recently, like Longhorn and a couple like Ruth Chris's and stuff. Had great steaks. There were great steaks there too, but that I would measure up against that as being equally just as good. I mean, it was tender the whole way through it. There's, you know, you're not going to beat that kind of steak. So I hope I can convince you maybe to buy a Sous Vide, not just Fire Crow, but anybody out there, like, you know, Blue as well, Mr. You know, all I eat is salads and broccoli all day long. So it's a week later. I still have not ripped and uploaded the steak Sous Vide video, and you know, I was thinking maybe I'd do a tougher dish or whatnot, and I had chicken on the bone, whole half chickens. And you know, I started them yesterday, and typically if I was just doing like chicken breast, you know, or something like that without any bones in it, I could have started it at 145, and within like, you know, 2-3 hours, 145, it's done. Pull it out, take it over to, you know, the skillet again, sear it for a minute or two. Perfection. I mean, you've seen that on the steak, you know it's perfection. There's not an issue with that. However, this is a little bit more of a complicated dish, which is why I thought maybe I would tackle it. I'm doing chicken on the bone, and this has been going since yesterday. I started at about, you know, 8 o'clock, and it's you know, 9:30. It's about 24 hours because it takes a little bit of time for the water to heat up, but this probably was done. I guess I don't do a lot of meats on the bone typically when I'm doing Sous Vide. I more or less do you know, usually meat not on the bone unless it's small bone, but a whole half bird like this at a time, or close to half bird, quartered bird. It'll take longer because it's on the bone. You're doing it at low temps. So, you know, you're talking 6 to 8 hours typically. And I also wanted to prove, because you know, I mentioned that you could let this thing go all day. You could start it when you go to work, walk away, come back at whenever it is you finally get off work. You could pull a, you know, a 6-hour day, a 12-hour day, you know, an 18-hour day, get home, your dinner's still just sitting here ready for you to go. Pop it out, put it in the skillet. It's perfection every time. So you see me do the skillet. I thought I might, because I just came back from Nashville last week, and I got to go to Happy's Hot Chicken again, which is some of the best fried hot chicken that there is. And I wanted to prove that this makes some of the best fried chicken that you got, because I mean, it's been sitting here for 24 hours. I know this will be nice and juicy, perfectly cooked. All I got to do is bread it up and just throw it in the fryer for a minute, just to, you know, get the bread all nice and crunchy. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get these guys pulled out. In fact, you know what? It's been in there plenty long enough. I mean, I've got nothing prepared, no ingredients ready to go. My skillet's not even hot yet, but I'm not overly concerned about that or anything. I'm just going to go ahead and start pulling stuff here. And then not only that, you can see the juices that came. Oh yeah, that's nice and hot. And you can get a good look at how all of this looks. I mean, if you look at that, that's all the liquid that came off that chicken as it cooked. And the longer you cook it, the more liquid will come off the meat typically, but it doesn't dry it out. And I'm gonna let that again sit, and I'm probably gonna quarter it right there and quarter right there just so I can bread up. Oh, sorry, here. Let's back up the camera. I'm probably gonna quarter it like right there and right there to just make them smaller pieces that I can throw in the pan real quick, bread it and fry it. I'm gonna get all that together, and there you go. I mean, cleanup's a cinch. Dump the water, let it dry, put it away, done. All right, so I'm almost ready to begin the frying of the chicken process. And let's just take a quick look here. My oil is heating up, but it is not quite there yet, I'm sure. Yeah, 196. And it won't be long in the oil. I mean, I'm pretty much just putting it in the oil to fry the actual breading itself. The chicken is all cut up. This skin is like gelatin heaven right now. I mean, it'll just slack right off of it if I touch it too much. I mean, if you look at like a cross section, that chicken is already just like perfectly cooked. I mean, it is tender, it's juicy, it's edible right now. It's perfectly cooked. All I'm doing this for is just to fry up the skin, fry up the breading, pull it out real quick. And I got my breading, I got my excess, and then also what came out of the bag, all that juice, perfect chicken stock. I'm going to turn that into like some miso or something like that, or maybe some ramen broth when I next batch of ramen. That'll be excellent. So here in a minute, once that oil gets hot, I'll just dip that in there, bam. Maybe like a minute and a half aside, flip it over, minute and a half aside, pull it out, maybe 2 minutes tops, and it'll be done, perfectly done. I mean, if anybody's ever done fried chicken on the bone, you know that takes a lot longer than that once it's on the bone. So this is just to do the outside. The inside is just going to be perfect. I mean, this was just off the fryer. Like, I literally pulled it off 30 seconds ago. This was the first batch out, which is why I took some bites of it, and the second batch out. And I could have done maybe a little bit better job on the breading and the seasoning. However, you can see that everything is breaded and cooked perfectly, really. And I gotta be honest with you, this stuff right here is so tender, so juicy. You don't need no barbecue sauce. Like some fried chickens, you might want to dip in some Tabasco or some sort of barbecue sauce. You don't need any of that on this. It falls apart. It is amazingly good. This actual little experiment makes me want to do something like ribs or really tougher meats that are on the bone, that if I cook like this for 24 hours, it's just gonna fall apart. So there's the results. I cannot be more happy with them, and I hope you give Sous Vide a try. Cheers.